My thoughts on Sony a year and a half later. What is good, YouTube? It's that one camera guy back at it again with a discussion video with you, going over my experience from shooting with Canon and then jumping into the Sony Mirrorless system almost over a year ago, a little over a year ago, and kind of diving into some topics that I want to speak specifically about it. Now, if this is not your style of video, just jump to another one that I've got, but this is for people who just want to know what it's been like for me going from Canon to Sony. And maybe you're in the same scenario. Maybe you shoot Canon and you're looking to go into Sony. You might be able to emulate some of the things that I've gone through, and you might feel the same way about some issues and some pros and cons about this whole system. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and give you some background. I first got into the Sony Mirrorless system back in March of 2016. The announcement of the Sony Alpha 6300 came about. I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Camera had 4K, 11 frames per second. It had 120 frames per second at HD recording, 4D autofocus, all of these great bells and whistles in this really small package. And it was a really exciting time. I mean, all this stuff in this little camera, and it was about $1,000 US. I had my pre-order ready the day it was available. I was like, I'm gonna get this camera. At that time, I had not had a mirrorless camera, so I went and got the Sony a6000. I bought a used one online just to kind of try it out. Wasn't really too happy with it at first. I just tried to learn as best as I could. And then when the Sony Alpha 6300 came around, I tried to compare them, test them out a little bit, then I sold off the a6000. So I started with the a6300 really and got my feet wet using it. And so that's sort of how I got started back in March of 2016. Never had any prior history other than with the Panasonic system, because I was holding off on going to Sony because I was still a Canon shooter, right? I was waiting for Canon to do 4K. I wanted better quality video, and they just weren't offering it in their camera systems. And you had Panasonic, who had like the G7s and their other models, and then their GH4 with 4K. So I hopped onto that early on in 2016. I bought two G7s, I think, in the December timeframe of 2015 when there was a sale. And then I picked up a GH4 shortly after because I was like, I want to get into this 4K world. And I didn't end up being happy with the Micro Four Thirds system. And that was just my personal experience. I'm not saying it's a bad system. If it works for you, that's great. But it just didn't work out for me, primarily because I wanted a strong photography camera as well as one that could do video. And so Sony sort of fit that bill for what I personally wanted. But yeah, that's sort of the background with the mirrorless system. Now let's talk about some of the things in the growing pains from going into the system. One of the big issues was just the menu system and understanding how to use it. The first video I released, I was trying to test it out, shooting some high school events, which was color guard, and I did not have a good grasp of it. I was using the old clunky autofocusing system in my mindset, right? Autofocus continuous, single point, and try to shoot and track subjects. And it just didn't do a really good job. I didn't understand how to sort of tweak and tune the autofocusing settings in video as well. And so it was okay for my experience. I had some struggle in low light in the gym where I was shooting at. But again, it was one of those growing pains. You know, you're just trying to learn the system, and I didn't quite understand it fully at the time. The other complaint, or sort of the frustration people have, is the menu system on the Sony Mirrorless system. And I understand the frustrations with it. It's not the most intuitive system, but after a year, after 6 months to a year of having used the mirrorless system, I feel very comfortable with their system layout now. Even with the change in their new menu system option, I don't get bothered by it anymore. And I do have a user guide that I made that really helps with it. But you know what I did? You know what I personally did was I went through the manual and I went page by page, and I tried to learn to understand how the menu worked, because it's easy to make a complaint about a system and not say it's not good, but did you really spend the time to try and learn it and use it? So I spent the time to learn it, to use it, and use it in practice. Now, I don't have everything down 100%. There are some things I don't use very often. But I kind of have a vague understanding of where to find it, and I don't have any big issues with it anymore. But if you just got the camera and you just want to say, I'm going to use it in a professional environment, hells to the yes, you're going to have problems with the menu system, okay? And that's exactly what I experienced when I first started with it. But if you've been using the camera, you're not going to have issues with it over time. Also, you must customize your settings. You need to allocate the custom buttons, the quick function menu options, and if you do that, you don't have to dive into the menu system very often at all. And so that's what I do. I take advantage of it. And it's the thing I love about the Sony Mirrorless system is that I don't have to dive into the menu system too often. Now, I really do wish Sony would submit a firmware update to the older model cameras and update and refresh the menu system and give better granular control over the options. It's really frustrating. So Sony, if you still do watch these videos, please make it happen. You know, I love the A9's ability to customize so many more choices. Give that to the other models. Make it happen. Find a way and help other users out, especially like the A6000 crowd, and get the better menu system and make it easier for people. Those refinements really do help. Absolutely 100%. All right. The thing about the Sony Mirrorless system, and I think when you go from Canon or Nikon, you're used to a particular way of thinking, like mental thinking of how to use the camera. And I do notice that users still find this issue. And I mentioned it earlier when I was shooting some, color guard performance arts, is that you have to separate the way you used to think about shooting and change your perspective on it. I used to be like, okay, I got to shoot looking into the EVF, right? The viewfinder all the time. And I realized, well, the camera can shoot without me having my eye up to here. What I see in the EVF, the performance of the camera through the EVF through the back of the screen is exactly the same. And so that gave me a lot more flexibility. I didn't have to get really low to the ground. I could use the flip out screen option on my camera, which most, if not all, the mirrorless cameras have that ability. You can get to different angles that you didn't have before, and you could trust the autofocusing system to be there 99% of the time. Those were things that I just didn't have the ability for with my Canon gear. And even with the dual pixel autofocusing technology, they don't have the same level of performance that a mirrorless system camera like the Sony system has with theirs. So you got to change the way you think about it. You got to learn how the autofocusing, the lock-on AF system works with the camera, and try to take your mind out of this idea that you have to shoot autofocus single. Like, I rarely ever shoot AFS on my Sony Mirrorless system. I'm almost always on AFC. Lock on AF, and I just start with the center point, half press a shutter, and I let that thing track the subject. And 90% of the time, it's pretty darn good. I can focus recompose. Well, the old school, old school focus recompose, I don't even have to do that anymore. I just hold the shutter button halfway on AFC, lock on AF, and just move my camera slightly, take the picture, and 90% of the time, it's going to be in focus. So you got to change your perspective, change your mindset of this system, and you'll learn to appreciate it even more. Let's go over some other growing pain issues. Lenses. The lenses are very, very expensive in the Sony Mirrorless system. No way how you look at it. There's no way you can really defend it. It's very expensive to invest in. Yes, some of the prices have gone down, and Sony as of late have not really been focusing on the APS-C line of cameras, which kind of sucks, because a lot of users have APS-C cameras. It just dawned to me in the last period over the summer that there are significant amounts of people who have the Sony A6000, but Sony's not releasing lenses for that group of people. And I'm just like, why aren't you doing it? You would sell even more products that way. But that's a different story, and I really do hope they put that effort in there. But I also hope that third-party manufacturers like Sigma jump in there and start addressing the needs for these individuals. Like, I would absolutely love it to see some more compact lenses, APS-C lenses for this particular group of people, because seriously, people aren't going to not everyone can drop over $1,000 on a G Master. Well, the G Masters are almost $2,000, right? They're going to drop that much money on those lenses. It's insane. So lenses is a big struggle right now, but it's getting better on the high-end market. But Sony needs to, this coming year, Sony, if you're listening, your goal, okay, come 2018, I better see 3-4 APS-C lenses drop for the system. If not, get 1 or 2 out before the end of this year somehow. But next year, man, hammer it home. And Sigma, if you're out there, get these APS-C lenses out for the Sony Mirrorless crowd. it's you got to make it happen. It's a need. It needs to be met, and it's just gonna give more options for this group of people. So I'm very excited about it. There's some growing pains, and so I've made some videos and tutorial guides on how to maximize your 16 to 50 kit lens and some basic prime lenses, and I've fallen in love with the whole manual focus lenses, right? I was pretty good with that stuff, but I just didn't really shoot with it because I'm always shooting action stuff. And so getting a manual focus lens never made a whole lot of sense until I just kind of slowed it down a little bit. I was like, let me just tone it down a little bit and try it out. And man, I fell in love with it. And so I'm getting really, I got that itch for like the manual focus lenses that are out there that are inexpensive and really just showing how easy it is to just shoot in manual focus and get a lot of great quality images out of those things. And so that's another thing about mirrorless systems is the ability to use focus peaking, the focus aids that are built into it to use manual focus glass. It makes it so easy. You can get an f1.4, f1.7 lens, f1.8 lenses for on the cheap. You can get some amazing quality images, and especially if you're a hobbyist, sky's the limit. I mean, you have so many options. Video features on the mirrorless system, again, I want to emphasize that, I really love it, 4K. I love the fact that Sony pushes that, and you get really good quality video, like the Alpha 6300, 6500, the A7R2, I'm blown away by the quality on that. Never used the A7S II, but I've only heard good things about its low light performance. The A9's 4K video is phenomenal as well. I was shooting that low light stuff that I did by light painting video. That was shot primarily on the A9. I was shooting anywhere from 6400 ISO to 12800, and it looked pretty darn good. And I even cropped into some shots. Very, very happy with it. So Sony's always hammering away at the video features. Absolutely love that, and they just got to keep going with it. Make the flip out screen, Sony. Make a fully articulating Sony A6000 or A7 series. We'd absolutely love it to be able to just flip the screen out and just just hammer it in, man. Just hammer that concept in. Okay, so here are the things. As we're continuing on, right? Sony is making some good progress. They're not there yet because they're still building their base of lenses and products. The new A9 is really a testament to the technology that Sony is always pushing forward in their cameras. If you haven't tried one out, if you can get to a store, if they have it, just try it out and you're going to see for yourself, like, holy crap, this is where the technology is going. And the folks who are still adamant about the DSLR technology and whatnot, I hope they can see the writing on the wall. It's not going to happen right away, obviously, but the future is going to be leaning towards mirrorless technology. And the A9, the autofocusing system in that thing is bar none. Like the 6300, 6500 autofocusing system was really good. A9 took it up another level. The low light performance is even better. Autofocusing speed, frames per second. Yeah, not everybody's going to need that. And so we're going to see that technology trickle down into their other models, and it's going to be a win-win for a lot of Sony mirrorless fans and users and people who are invested in the system. And so it is going to be an exciting time, this next generation of cameras that come around from Sony, to see what they end up doing in terms of that technology. And that's what we want to see from Sony, and I'm very excited about that. And like I said, the A9 was a camera I was waiting for. I was at the A7R2 line, the 6500, and I was like, man, I just want to see a full frame Alpha 6500. The A9 is basically that camera on steroids, primarily, practically, right? And it's been great. And I'll get to this other issue in a little bit here, but it's a great tool. Again, it's more camera than most people are going to need, but it's a peek into what the future is capable of with that system. Let's go over the biggest con or the biggest concern that I have personally with the Sony mirrorless system, and that's going to be overheating. And over the summer, there was that huge debacle and drama fest with the whole A9 overheating, and it was a very interesting time because when I made that video, I spoke from the heart. And people can say whatever they want about it, but I spoke because of my concern over the system overheating, because it's what I experienced. And I am very invested in the Sony Mirrorless system, and I was concerned. I said, hey, this camera is overheating, or I'm getting the indicator to turn on. And even the camera that I got from Lens Rental via Sony Pro Support also overheated and actually shut down when I was actually using it. And again, I got the same folks out there who just for whatever reason have never experienced overheating on their mirrorless cameras, which I think that's great. If you've never experienced overheating on your cameras, then that's all the more power to you. But there's a number of us out there that have experienced it. But what I always found it very strange was this group of very adamant individuals who were just like, they were sympathizing for Sony in such a way that this camera is perfect, never overheated in its entire life. This person is lying. They were cooking their camera. They were doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm just in my head, I'm like, well, I'm showing you what's going on. I'm putting it into its place, and that's what it was. Then there was a lot of people who understood it because they've experienced and they've seen it. And then there's just always a subgroup of people that just could not wrap their heads around, and they thought their camera was perfect. And I'm like, there's no such thing as a perfect camera. And you can't always look at the positives of a camera. You got to look at the negative sides of a camera. And I wanted to point those out. And so I just found it interesting, right? People said, oh, you can't believe this guy. He has no subscribers, or he's just doing it for views or whatever. Although I'm a YouTube channel, I don't quite understand that concept. And you had Kai Man Wong. He had overheating when he was shooting with the 12-24. Matt Granger also mentioned overheating with the A9 when he was shooting inside of a studio. Even Dave Dugdale had some issues with overheating when he mentioned it in his recent A9 video. And I've had other YouTubers mentioned to me they've had overheating problems with their Alpha 6500, 6300 series cameras. So it's out there. I just don't understand. And even Sony addressed the problem with a firmware update, and it's kind of like deer in the headlights. They're like, well, the camera still doesn't overheat. I'm like, well, if Sony released a firmware update to address the thing that I was talking about, then hell yeah, it did have a problem. But it was just so strange to me that even after it happened, there was people that still were like, it doesn't overheat, there's no problem. Absolutely there's a problem. I just don't get it. I don't know. And I was just like, it was like deer in the headlights, man. Like, this was me the entire time. I'm like, what do these people want? What do you really need to see to believe that something like this doesn't happen? It was the silliest thing ever. And I'm like, you're getting all these other individuals talking about it. But I got a replacement unit from B&H Photo from my original camera, and I haven't had any issues with it. The funny thing is, I don't know when this video is going to be up, but I am going to go shoot with the A9 a little bit at a parade, and it's going to be like 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And what's really weird, for those of you that do watch my videos, I was at a summer conference in Malibu for about a week or 4 days, and 70-degree weather. Weather was very nice, very cool. Yes, direct sunlight, but very cool, not that hot, okay? Came back to the Central Valley in California, it was hot, okay? 100+ degrees every day here, okay? That's just normal life here in the valley, right where I'm at. And you can feel that heat beating on you. When I was on the coastline, great weather, great weather. So overheating is a real problem. My Sony a6000, I shot in this room, no AC, 85 degrees, overheated, shut down 10 minutes. Okay? AC did fine. A6300, I've had overheating problems with it. I have two A6300s, bought them at 2 different points, like 3 to 4 months in difference. Overheated, right? I even shot a pageant, and I had a student of mine, he shot with the Alpha 6300. I even gave him specific instructions. Shoot in 4K. If it shuts down, switch over to 1080p. And it did. It actually shut down on him, and he switched over to 1080p, then it was okay. So the overheating thing is real, and if it doesn't happen to you, that's great. But it's just weird when people say it's not real. And I know I've gone too long with this. Okay. All right. Okay. So Sony Mirrorless. I'm almost at the point where I'm going to transition over to Sony already. I'm getting ready to go ahead and possibly sell off my Canon gear already at this point. I might hold on to one camera and maybe a couple lenses. But Sony's going in the right direction. Really love the stuff that they're doing. And I'm just very happy with it. I'm absolutely happy with the cameras. And as long as I'm very conscious of the whole overheating thing, and I keep an eye on it, it's not a big deal. And the only time I'm ever experiencing it is during the hottest peaks of the weather here where I live in the valley. So during the fall, spring time frame, not a big deal. But during baseball season, maybe track and field might be a little bit of an issue. But other than that, that's it. That's my Sony venture. Love the system. It's working really well. I've pointed out some of the big cons that I've had with it. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are in it. I know everyone has very different experiences with both good and bad. I love to hear both the good and the bad because, again, it's never always a good thing to hear the good things. It's always important to see both sides of the story. So let me know in the comments below what your history and your time frame has been with the Sony Mirrorless system. And yeah, that'll do it, guys. Like, subscribe, check out my other videos. And with that said, I'm your host, Camera Guy, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.